Well, hello there, and welcome to this little live stream. I've decided to talk about a duo that have kind of blown up on the internet and on YouTube, and they kind of came on my horizon about a week ago. And then I noticed that a lot of other musicians were talking about them, and they seem to be a big thing at the moment. So I thought, yes, I am going to talk about them because their music is something that just works for me, something in my brain just resonates with their style. So they are called Angine de Poitrine, which I think is the correct pronunciation there. So they are a duo, and they have taken off for a couple of reasons. One, they have a very distinctive visual look. There's no doubt about that. You know, you're not going to forget them in a hurry. And I must admit, I made a short about a third member of the band, which there was a TV program a long time ago. I think it was a children's program, and it had a character called Nosy Bonk, who was this creepy man with a mask and like a large nose. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of the aesthetic that they are going for with their look. They're not the only ones to have done this, to have an anonymous appearance so that they're, I suppose, dehumanizing themselves, which is kind of good, because I think when you think of popular music and you think of people like, say, Sabrina Carpenter and, your big celebrity pop stars, it's the opposite, isn't it? It's all about them. It's all about the image and the sex appeal. And the music really kind of comes secondary. Whereas I think with a band such as Angine de Poitrine, they're sort of essentially saying, look, we are hiding, we're disguising ourselves. Yes, it's a bit of an outrageous costume, but once you kind of get past that, you realize that actually they're wanting you to focus on the music. They want you to listen and to engage with the music, and that's what it's all about. So why are they important now? Well, I think this is the perfect time for them to come, to come to the forefront, really, because as you may be aware, we are inundated now with artificial AI trash everywhere. And I'm not just talking about music, I'm talking just everything now, from voiceovers to YouTube videos that have voiceovers that are just AI generated, to AI videos, AI music, and it's getting increasingly difficult now to tell things apart. Now, musicians have a slightly more developed ear, and they can tell the difference between AI music and the real deal. But for the general public, the general listening public, it is getting increasingly difficult. But also, it's becoming increasingly oversaturated with music, and our relationship to music is changing, I feel, in terms of how we actually react and respond and listen to music. And it's been really disheartening to see recently a lot of people who aren't musicians, who have no musical skill or talent whatsoever, who are churning out AI music. And people in the comments are praising them for their genius and their amazing music. And I find it incredibly difficult to get my head around, because they're not producing the music, they're not learning the instruments, they're not constructing it, they have no idea what's happening musically. They're just typing in to a program, an AI software, to how they want it to sound. And it's really disheartening when you're a musician and a composer to try and find a kind of an audience who are willing to invest in you and to give you that time and attention that you need. And that brings me on to the next thing, that I've always believed that music has to be a two-way street. You have to give something back to the music you're listening to. You can't just passively let it kind of just do what it does, otherwise it's just background music. And I think the best music demands something from its listener. You have to meet it halfway. And I guess that's why I've always liked music that isn't really mainstream. I've always liked things that were quite quirky and a little bit zany and off the wall, and require me to actually have to really listen a lot harder and dissect and get my head around it. And I think that's what music should be. It should be a relationship where, you are presented with the music and you have to unpack it. It shouldn't just be laid out for you just as easy as that. And that is what pop music is. Essentially, pop music is a very safe environment, isn't it? I think the greatest fear for pop music is to do something that is unpredictable or unstable, because it thrives on predictability. It thrives on not doing anything that's going to confuse people or put people off buying the music en masse. Does that make good art? Probably not. Does it make good business? Probably. But when you're coming from the direction that you are interested in art and music as as a way of presenting musical ideas, then sometimes you need to look a little bit deeper at things. And so I've listened to the band now for a couple of days, so I'm still very much unpacking. I'm at that stage where I'm unpacking what's going on, and I thought we would have like a little listen to some of their music and see what's kind of going on there. Now it's funny. I've read a lot of comments from people who've sort of said, I wonder who they are, because they've gone for an anonymous kind of look. No one quite knows who they are, and I think you hear all the time, don't you, about alien disclosure. One day we're going to get that important disclosure where we finally find out about life on other planets, and I think this would be a fantastic real alien disclosure. Can you imagine if these two people were actually from another planet, and this is how the alien disclosure was going to be presented? Because it is quite otherworldly, definitely. I wouldn't say it's completely outrageously crazy. I mean, I've heard crazier stuff, but it's it's refreshing. It's refreshing, and there's a couple of things that they're doing that I think they do very well, and I think that's what makes it successful. So let me just switch over to here. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's kind of going on musically. I'm just going to pull up the video of their live performance. So if I just come out of here a second, go there. There we go. So as you can see, they have a very distinctive look. They've gone very much for the polka dots. There's a lot of symbolic visualization kind of going on in here. The black and the white, the polka dots, and the triangle. I mean, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but who knows? There could be some kind of hidden meaning to a lot of this, or it could just be that's what they've kind of gone for. And so what we have is we have two musicians. We have the drummer and we have a guitarist who has a double guitar, one acting as a bass and one acting as a lead guitar. And they have a lot of pedals, which is designed for obviously changing the sound, but also for looping, because a lot of the phrases are looped and then layered up, because obviously there's only two of them, so they need to layer things, and that's all they have. There is nothing else. There's no keyboards. I mean, they do use their voices, but you'll appreciate when you hear it that it's not your traditional singing, I would say. And that's all they have. There's no other instruments. There's nothing else going on at all. They just rely solely on those two instruments. So in terms of what's actually going on musically, well, I would probably say it harks back a little bit more to Steve Reich and minimalism, I would say, because it's built upon repetitive phrases. And what makes them stand apart, I suppose, to perhaps what we're used to hearing is the use of microtonality. Now, for those of you, I try and make it as simple as I can. Essentially, in music, in Western music, what we hear pretty much day in, day out, we have 12 musical pitches. So if you go to a piano or a keyboard and you go through each of the available notes, there are 12 different notes available to us to make music with. And that's it. That's what we think music is. It's those 12 notes and those 12 notes only. And we kind of think of music as being either in tune or out of tune. So that's not necessarily the case. So music is not a kind of a step thing. It's not something that goes through steps and stages and conforms. It's sound waves, and it's what we do with the sound waves. But we try to kind of box everything into a particular category, don't we? We try to put everything into a system that we can understand. But there are notes that are in between the 12 notes, and that's where we get into microtonality. That's where we start to get pitch that is not a C or a D or a C sharp. It's kind of the in-between notes. Now, to most people, that would sound out of tune because we are used to hearing either the note C or the note D. We're not used to hearing something that doesn't fit on the piano and that we can kind of play. And this is precisely what they have done. They have decided to explore microtonality. So we have these kind of riffs that are played that are based on microtonality. It still sounds melodic, but it also sounds quite alien as well. It sounds like it's not quite right. And that's the bit that many people might find a bit jarring at first. They might hear it and think, well, this sounds out of tune. This doesn't sound good at all. It just sounds like someone making a load of noise. But that's because our ears have been conditioned to hear the 12 musical pitches that we have in music. And so this is a great opportunity, I think, to start accepting microtonality a little bit more, and if I just put it there, maybe it can open up a whole new world of music for us if we start to have microtonality as being a little bit more of a standard rather than a kind of novelty. And just think how much that opens up the world of music, because we are living in a time now where AI is taking over, and it's very bland and it's very generic. And it's time that we sort of started to kind of think about how we can evolve as musicians and how we can present things differently and in a way that's creative and imaginative. And I think that's what they've done here. And then basically they build up these riffs and these patterns, very much like minimalism, Steve Reich in unusual time signatures, but very much loop based. So like they'll have a phrase that will go around and around and around. And the drummer then will add his beats, his drum beat, and he is the groove master. He is the guy that does all of the grooves, and the groove is what really makes this music come alive. The guitar work is great, it's fantastic on its own, but it needs it's like yin and yang. It needs the groove in order to kind of make it come alive. And the groove is incredibly infectious and incredibly catchy, as you'll hear when we have a little listen. Now, I appreciate this isn't going to be for everybody. I'm sure if I played this to the general Joe Blogs on the street who's used to just listening to Radio 2, they would probably find it quite hard to get their head around. But I think people are ready now. I think people are ready for just something new and fresh and different, because, there's only so much Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter the world can take, and the kind of the glossy celebrity status of fakeness. And I think, that's what I like about, I'm not that bothered about their image, the costumes. Yes, the costumes are very interesting and very visually distinctive, but actually I'm not too bothered about that. I'm more interested in actually the music, and I think it's fantastic, and we're going to have a little listen to it now. If you've not heard them before, brace yourself, and we'll kind of talk through what we can hear going on. If you've got any comments, do let me know. Do feel free to write your comment in the box. And if you're watching this on catch up, restream, or whatever you want to call it, then please do drop a like. So here we go. Let's have a little listen. I'm hoping this is going to work okay. Okay, I'm just going to pause it there. So I really hope one day when there's alien disclosure, I really do hope these two are the actual real aliens from another planet who've actually just come down to Earth to share their music and share their tunes. Now, when you actually listen to it in terms of what's happening musically there, it's just good old-fashioned rock and roll. The drummer is doing a 12/8 beat, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. It's very kind of swing-like, and the guitarist is doing these very repetitive patterns, just like you get in rock music, rock and pop. You get a repeated bass line, and then they've got a repeated guitar part over the top. The only difference is that the guitar and the bass part are based on microtonality. So it would be quite hard for me, well, near enough impossible for me to take the notes and play them on the piano, because they're often fitting between the pitches, fitting between the notes. So that's what makes it quite challenging and unusual to listen to. There's a sort of sense that it doesn't quite sound in tune. But as I said to you before at the start of this video, we think of things as being in tune and out of tune, which is not strictly the case. We have the 12 pitches that we are familiar with and we've been conditioned to understand, and then we've got all of those notes in between, and that's what they're exploring. But as you can hear, it's got a fantastic kind of groove. It's very repetitive. You have to kind of really lock into that kind of groove. It's almost a bit like an experience. A bit like, when you hear religious chanting, there isn't really a sense of direction. It just kind of exists, and it's very much like this. It's kind of like an experience, isn't it, where you just lock into that kind of idea. But as you'll hear, it does change. They change up the rhythm, they change up the groove. So let's carry on and let's hear what happens as we go forward. Okay, so yeah, I mean that groove when it changes and the groove in the drums change, it's so catchy, it's so foot tapping, and the riffs are fantastic because it's like I can hear the riff, I can hear the kind of the tune of the riff, but at the same time I couldn't really sing it back to you or play it to you. It's kind of because it's using these kind of notes that are in between. It's really hard. It's really hard for your ear sometimes to kind of get used to it. But I really like, I mean, I've always liked repetition. Some people don't. Some people hate things that just repeat over and over. But I like repeated patterns. And, you can hear that you've got the bass pattern, you've got the guitar patterns that kind of slot over. And they almost create like a harmony, because of the way that they kind of fit together and they're kind of moving in the same sort of rhythm. And I really like that. And that groove is really, really funky. And this is the thing that I wanted to kind of touch upon is that, when I was studying music at university, I I liked things that were a little bit quirky and unusual, but I always found that the contemporary music of, say, let me think, like I forgot what he's called now. Say like Stockhausen and Berio. I always found that they were very extreme in that they would do things that were very extreme musically, and it was too cerebral. You had to analyze it really in depth. I remember having sessions at university where we were analyzing this stuff, and it was just soul destroying. It was just so dry and analytical, and it kind of was devoid of any kind of personality. And so, as I kind of went through my university life, I started to discover unusual bands that were more rock based, who were doing things unusually. And that's what led me into sort of progressive rock, and bands then such as Cardiacs and Gentle Giant, who were musically really satisfying to listen to because they weren't just doing your 3 or 4 chord, you know, routine that every band does. But they were doing things that were very complex musically, but also had that kind of principle, key core element of accessibility to it, which was the groove, the rhythm. We are primal beasts, aren't we? We are animals, and we respond to the primal sense of rhythm, and we need that. And I think bands like Gentle Giant and Cardiacs gave us that. And I think this is why I like the music that we've got here from Angine de Poitrine, because it is cerebral, it's analytical, it's complex, but it still has the heart of pure joy. The pure joy of rhythm, and how rhythm sounds, and how the beat and the pulse makes us want to move, and is really, really catchy. And I think that's what makes it work. So let's just we'll just listen to the end. So we've got another minute or so. Okay, there we go. So you have to be okay with repetition, and I think repetition is good. I think we should be able to listen to things. We live in a world of very low attention spans, and I think being able to listen to repetitive things and to really, really kind of engage with them, I think is really important. And obviously, there's a lot of repetition there, but if you start to really train your ear to listen to those individual bits, hone in on the bass, hone in on the drums, hone in on the guitar, it opens up a really wonderful world of music for you to explore. So I want to finish this live stream really with just a question, I guess, if I can find where it is. And I think this is an important question, and that is, how or should they evolve? Now, they are very popular at the moment, and people are really, really into them, and rightly so. But they are a duo of drums and bass, which is not a problem. You can just have drums and bass. But if you listen to quite a lot of their music, it has there is a very similar framework there. The drums, the bass, the repetitive loops, and that's absolutely fine. That's fine. But what would you say evolution would look like for a group like this? What would be their next stage? Where would they go after this? Do they need to evolve, or should they just concentrate on just doing this? Is this enough? That's the question I wanted to ask, really, because I need to listen to more of their music. I've listened to some of it, but I've not listened to all of it. I know they've got a couple of albums, um, available, and I need to listen to it a little bit more to see what I think. But I do wonder where they go from here. You know, what is the next stage? How can they keep fresh and relevant? Because they've caught everyone's attention now. Everyone's got, you know, they've got everyone's attention. How do you then move forward and keep the attention? Because, you know, there is certainly a novelty aspect. You know, the way that they're dressed and the appearance clearly is designed to catch attention, but you then have to move forward. Now, they've clearly got the chops. They've clearly are exceptional musicians, whoever they are. Um, what can they do next? That'll be the thing that I'll be most interested in, you know, looking into and finding out how it goes. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my thoughts on this group. Please do leave a like, and subscribe to the channel if you feel like you would like to. But as I said, this was really just a discussion today about the group, finding out a little bit about what they're all about, what they're doing, and why I think they're so important now at this point. I don't think they would have been so important 5 years ago, but I think now, it's important for us to have something fresh and original to listen to when we have so much AI content around, which is just starting to make everything bland and monochrome rather. Anyway, thank you very much. I will sign off for now, and I'll see you all in my next videos. Take care. Bye.